Hello, my name is Barbara Kay, and on behalf of my co-host Susan Pertnoy and the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County, I'd like to welcome you to our program, MOSAIC.
We're here today at a Federation event called Vodka, Latka, and Tzedakah. We're going to learn about it and meet a very special guest, Jonathan Schanzer. We'll be back with our guests and our program after this brief message.
Through our partner agency programs in Israel, Federation creates opportunities for at-risk youth, families, and seniors. We also provide emergency assistance to the victims of terrorism. Community, like every gift, counts. Together, we can ensure a vibrant Jewish future. Federation and you, changing the world together.
When I was young, I went to Jewish summer camp, traveled to Israel, and participated in leadership development groups. Today I'm teaching my children that being part of the Jewish community helps keep our heritage and traditions alive and vibrant, and can be fulfilling, exciting, and fun.
At the age of 90, I started a second career, delivering meals to homebound seniors. Because I'm a senior myself, I know how tough it can get. If somebody is in trouble and needs help, we need to be there for them. As Jews, it's who we are. It's what we do.
When my family needed help, we turned to the Federation, and they were there for us. How good it was for us to know that we are not alone.
Community, like every gift, counts. Together, we can ensure a vibrant Jewish future. Federation and you, changing the world together. What if you could change the world? You can. We can do it together. With the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County, you are here, and we are all connected. Together, we can enrich Jewish life, care for vulnerable populations, and build global Jewish community. That's what we do, every day, here at home and around the globe.
Welcome back, and a special welcome to you, Hope Silverman. Before we start, I just want to congratulate you, a hearty mazel tov of being honored as the Advocate of the Year for the Alpert Jewish Family and Children's Services.
Thank you so much.
That's
I really
really very
appreciate it.
special.
It was a special day, and I'm very proud to be recognized by our community and by the Alpert Jewish Family and Children's Service. Thank you.
That's really
Thank you.
terrific. You've been involved in the Federation for a very long time.
I've been here 15 years, and I started volunteering the day I came.
You are culminating your run as campaign chair of the Jewish Federation.
Right, yes.
And can you please tell me what motivates your passion?
I love this community, I love our Jewish people, and I love everyone that I've come in contact with who feels the same way I do about this community. And most of the people that are living here in Florida have all come from a different zip code. And yet when you come to this zip code, you realize how large the Jewish community is and what the responsibilities are. And I'm proud to be able to help raise money through the Federation because it goes to all of our agencies and they're all of our partners, and I feel like my gift helps to deliver Meals on Wheels or helps Jewish Family and Children's Service with families during challenging times in their lives. And we have so much to be thankful. Our new Meyer Academy just opened 3 months ago, and on the campus with the Mandel GCC. I can go on and on. There are so many reasons to give to this community.
That it's really true. But you started, I think, in Detroit. Is that
Absolutely.
true?
I came from Detroit, and I was active in my Detroit community with the Federation and National Council of Jewish Women, and I've always been a volunteer my whole adult life. I love it.
Did that come from your family?
Yes, my mother was a volunteer. She worked at Sinai Hospital. She also worked for the Federation and NCJW, and you learn from example. And I have 2 wonderful daughters who are also volunteers, and I hope my granddaughters and grandson will follow in their parents' footsteps.
I'm sure they will
Thank you.
with a role model like
Oh,
you.
thank you very much.
So what's your next role in this community?
My next role, I'm very honored to sit on many of the boards of this community. I sit on the Alpert Jewish Family and Children's Services Board, the Federation Board, the CJE Board. I'm active with Jewish Women's Foundation, so it's hard to get my golf game in because I'm very busy.
I see that. One of the main challenges is community awareness. How do you as a lay leader accomplish getting the word out?
It's funny you should ask me this because this last week was our whole week of vodka, latke, and tzedakah that we had in our entire community starting on Monday. Last Monday was at Ballin Isles, which partnered with IBIS and with Old Palm. And the vodka, latke, and tzedakah event is getting all of your neighbors in your community together. And then we talk about what's going on in our community and we can really engage people. Community is a 12-month community, but so many people are here 4, 5, 6, and 7 months, and then they go back. And it's nice for them to come back and find out what's happening in their community, and we get to tell them at the vodka, latke, and tzedakah.
How successful are these?
Major successfully. Just on Monday, when they had it at Ballin Isles, there were 400 people there. We had a wonderful, wonderful speaker, and we got to really talk about what's going on with our community, and all the neighbors get to see each other, and it's really the kickoff for the Jewish community, for our federation.
That's wonderful. Who thought of this idea?
To tell you the truth, it started at Hunter's Run maybe 8 years ago with a couple by the name of Max and Inga Adler who started it. The first year it was called Vodka and Latke, and after the first year, Max said, I think we should add tzedakah because people at this time can make their pledge, which is just fantastic, and people close their gifts at the vodka latke. So beside us reaching out to them and telling them where their wonderful contribution is going to, we get to look them in the eye and tell them really personally how their philanthropy is changing our community.
That's wonderful, and they're with their peers, and it's great outreach.
It's wonderful.
Well, you have a very special speaker, Jonathan Schanzer, and he's going to be he's been at all 3 events this week.
Right, he was fantastic. You know, he was a fabulous speaker and brought some humor to what is, really a very important subject, Israel and our unfriendly neighbors. And he really answered questions, and you could hear a pin drop in the audiences of the ones that I attended. I'm sure it was for all of them. He was a great speaker. We were very lucky to have him.
Oh, that's wonderful, and we're going to have the opportunity to speak to him as well.
Oh, wonderful.
And I thank you for joining us, and I appreciate all the work you do in the community.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks,
Thank you. Thanks so much, Susan.
Welcome, Jonathan Schanzer. What a pleasure it is to have you here.
Thank you very much.
You're an amazing scholar, terrific author, and also you're the research vice president of FDD.
Correct.
I think it would be interesting if everybody knew what FDD was.
Sure. We're Foundation for Defense of Democracies. We're a think tank in Washington, a 501c3 organization, an educational organization that provides research to the public as well as to the government on issues pertaining primarily to the Middle East as well as terrorism and other conflict zones around the world.
Is it fairly new?
We're about 12 years old. We were founded just before 9/11. And we have grown considerably over these 12 years. We're now up to about 40 people. It's been a very exciting decade.
You're located in Washington, I presume.
Correct.
Yeah, interesting. Meanwhile, I have to tell you, The State of Failure, this book really knocked my socks off. It really is an incredible book.
Thank you.
It was quite a journey to write this book. It had to be.
It was. It was very interesting. Basically, it started over concern over something that we're seeing right now in the news, actually, that the Palestinians were going to the UN and they were going to try to declare a state.
Well, they just went actually to try to reestablish that in 2016.
Yeah, that's right. And so I saw the beginnings of this and I began to get concerned, wondering what would a Palestinian state actually look like? I mean, how many people stopped to ask, how are they doing as a government? Right? We know how they fight with the Israelis. We know what the diplomatic spats are. but who has actually stopped to ask whether they're delivering as a government? And so I began this exploration, and I found that there was a huge amount of corruption and waste. And this is incredibly important to the American taxpayer because, of course, we provide $600 million a year, roughly 20% of the Palestinian budget every year. And so I uncovered a great deal of corruption, mismanagement, and I think this is an incredibly important topic for us to be looking at now as the Palestinians push for a state.
Yeah, but you know something interesting? I don't think anybody has written anything like this. In terms of the credibility of the government, Ramallah is a mess.
That's right.
And you talked about the money aspect of it. They have abused the funding that we've sent.
Well, they have, and what I was actually getting at here is that traditionally in Washington, the focus is, and I say this in the book, that it's about the transaction, not the transformation. In other words, we keep wanting to see the handshake on the White House lawn. We want to see the new map that includes the Palestinians and Israelis living side by side. But we never look at how to transform Palestinian society to make sure that it is successful alongside a very advanced Israeli society. This is going to be crucial for peace, and it is overlooked time and again.
You know, it's interesting you say they're always upset about the politics taking place in Israel. I mean, the fact that they're having new elections now, et cetera, and the Knesset is what is out of the picture. But do they ever look at their own infrastructure?
They don't. I mean, and that's the point. There have been moments where the Palestinians have flirted with reform, where they've had reformists like Salam Fayyad, who was the prime minister. Right. He was kicked out of office last year after fights with Mahmoud Abbas over corruption, over good governance. And so, but the real important thing here is that the United States never stops to ask. I mean, we have a spotlight on the Israelis and what they do. It's a very open society. On the Palestinian side, we tend to give them a free pass time and again because they claim that they're under such hardship, and because they claim that life is so unfair. We don't hold them accountable on issues of good governance, and that has angered the people in Ramallah and the West Bank, and it's something that we can't ignore.
Yeah, but it's something we have to discuss. We'll be back with the remainder of our program right after this brief message.
Federation and our overseas partners support the resurgence of Jewish life in Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union. We also provide humanitarian assistance wherever Jews encounter poverty and crisis. Community, like every gift, counts. Together, we can ensure a vibrant Jewish future. Federation and you, changing the world together.
When I was young, I went to Jewish summer camp, traveled to Israel, and participated in leadership development groups. Today I'm teaching my children that being part of the Jewish community helps keep our heritage and traditions alive and vibrant, and can be fulfilling, exciting, and fun.
At the age of 90, I started a second career, delivering meals to homebound seniors. Because I'm a senior myself, I know how tough it can get. If somebody is in trouble and needs help, we need to be there for them. As Jews, it's who we are. It's what we do.
When my family needed help, we turned to the Federation, and they were there for us. How good it was for us to know that we are not alone.
Community, like every gift, counts. Together, we can ensure a vibrant Jewish future. Federation and you, changing the world together.
Welcome back to MOSAIC. And you know, prior to the break, we were talking about misunderstanding. People really don't understand. The United States government doesn't understand what's going on. And I think one of the things that we have to discuss is the fact that the press is so limited and directed in terms of its information. And you know, a little bit of information is 95% of reality. So what can we do about something like that?
Well, one of the things that I looked at in the book is that there are very few journalists who will even bother to take a look at the Palestinian decision makers. The average journalist doesn't know who the foreign minister is of the Palestinian Authority. In fact, most people don't even know who the prime minister is right now, the Palestinian Authority. They think about it as one man, Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, as making all of the choices. And this is the remarkable thing. He's 9 years into a 4-year term. He's 80 years old, a pack-a-day smoker. He's survived, I think, a heart attack and high blood pressure. In other words, this is a man who's not around much longer. And when we think about what happens next, there is no succession plan.
No, there isn't, but they had Fayed, and he was terrific.
That's right, and they kicked him out. And so now, actually, if you look at the letter of the law in Palestinian society, the guy who is slated to take over for Mahmoud Abbas is the Speaker of Palestinian Parliament. His name is Aziz Wake, and he's a member of Hamas. This is what we're looking at here, and very few journalists bother to ask these, I think, very simple questions. You know they would be asked in Israel. You know they would be asked in the United States. But these journalists will not ask these tough questions, primarily because they feel beholden to the people who are taking them around in what is seen as somewhat of a dangerous territory.
Yeah, they're worried too.
Yeah.
They're worried because they're afraid that something will happen to them if they say something that is against what is taking place.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very, I tell you something, I don't know how, you know, when they had, it's interesting, when the Palestinians had Fayed in place, he started to create an economic climate that was for the first time realistic. He had judgment calls that were the first time realistic, and they didn't want him.
Right. That's exactly right. And it was Abbas that didn't want him. It was the president that did not want him. Yeah. They did not see eye to eye on issues of reform, of countering corruption. That you have Mahmoud Abbas as kind of a very old school leader, following in the footsteps of Yasser Arafat, and Fayed is a very different kind of politician. The hope is that right now he's got an NGO that he's just started up, and that perhaps he'll be able to continue to establish a very positive track record, so that perhaps when it is time to think about succession, that he'll be well placed. But the problem is in the Middle East, it's the people with the money and the guns that always rise to power. Yeah. And this is a man who is a bureaucrat. He truly wants to transform Palestinian society from within through law and through economic reform. This is, I think, a man before his time.
Yeah, it's really a tremendous challenge. You know, one of the things that you mentioned in the book, which I'd like perhaps for you to discuss, was the fact that the Israelis are difficult with the Palestinians. In other words, they have been, in a sense, in the way of developing this peace process as well.
Well, they have, and I would blame the United States as well. That I think the overriding concern has been with keeping the Palestinian leadership fat and happy. In other words, as long as these leaders are prospering, as long as they are content with the status quo, well then let's not worry about good governance. Let's not worry about corruption. Let's not worry about any of these things. We'll leave it to them to decide what's best for their people. The problem is that the more this continues, the more frustrated the people get on the streets, and they begin to look at the peace process as part of the problem, not the solution. And I think that's where we have gone over the years.
Do you really think that we're going to have a peace situation, a peaceful situation?
Look, it's hard in my business to be an optimist. Pessimism usually proves yourself right at the end of the day. But I do believe that looking into some of these issues, better governance, countering corruption, if you can handle some of these things first, I think they're the cornerstone to the creation of peace. I think what we've tried to do is run before we can walk. In other words, everybody needs to put their own house in order first before you can start to get to the negotiating table. If we can get the Palestinians to look inward for just a little while to fix some of their own internal problems, I think they're going to be better suited as peace partners. And so for that reason, I still have a shred of optimism.
You do?
A shred.
A shred. You know, it's interesting the way the formulation of the book. After World War I, you took each presidency and described the situation in the Middle East in terms of our government and the responses of the various presidents. I thought it was a very clever format because I really, in looking through the whole thing, I had no idea the involvement. There were points where they were completely, they threw the Palestinians and the Middle East away. They didn't even bother.
That's
it was
right.
It was no concern.
That's right, and actually we're seeing to a certain extent some of that right now. You know, there's a sense that perhaps this administration would like to pivot away from the Middle East. We hear about pivoting to Asia.
Right.
But actually the point of that chapter was to really lay down a history that demonstrates that increasingly over the last 30 to 40 years, every president in the United States has gotten increasingly sympathetic to the idea of a Palestinian state. and that ultimately it looks like we're probably going to get there, whether it's this president or the next or the one after. And again, my point is that if we continue to ignore the governance issues, we're going to continue to come up against the same problems. And so it was actually an attempt to try to get those who care about this issue to focus on this one aspect that has gone overlooked time and again.
Well, do you think, for instance, the situation in Israel now, I don't know if Netanyahu is going to win, but there's a lot of discussion about the fact that he may not. And you may go more towards center and have a completely different approach. Do you think it would make a difference?
Well, in my view, I think what we'd probably find is that any government will likely have the same approach to the main issues that have been at the core of the conflict between the United States and Israel over the last few years. In other words, if a boss is still in power, he is still not going to be a wonderful peacemaker.
No.
Again, not the right guy from my perspective, primarily because of these good governance issues, and he's become a tyrant in his own right. If you look at the Iran issue, that's not going to change. Any prime minister is going to be deeply concerned about a deal that is made that allows Iran to keep any of its nuclear components from this illicit nuclear program. And so I think that there may be a different tone, there could be a different personality that could get along better with our president, but I don't see that the core issues are going to change. And it's also important to note that 2 years from now, there's going to be a new U.S. president who may deal very differently with whoever comes in next in Israel. And so it'll be a very dynamic and fluid situation for at least the next 2 years.
Yeah. I tell you something, with the challenges in the world, Israel really is such a small country. Ergo that their defense now is very strong. They're much better, they've proven that. But I'm really concerned. I mean, they have the challenge of Iran. They had the challenge of relationships with Turkey. Now Egypt is creating unrest. They have such a poor economy. The people are getting very restless in Egypt, and that was a very good ally for them. I don't know what direction they're going to be going in. I mean, I really, it's such a pressure for a small country. It's unbearable when I think about it.
The pressures are enormous, and I often wonder how Israeli defense planners can sleep at night. But I'll say this, the one bright spot that I've seen has actually been Egypt. It's not to say
that way?
I do.
Really?
I'll tell you why. It's not because I think Egypt is getting more stable. I think that we've seen a lot of reason to be concerned about the move away from rule of law, and this General Sisi is not a Democrat, be clear.
I know that.
But what he has done is he's actually destroyed more than 2,000 smuggling tunnels that had traditionally helped Hamas arm and finance itself. And so Hamas is a lot weaker today than it was a year ago. And I would even argue that the war that we saw this summer, that 50-day war, was largely the result of Hamas trying to change its financial fortunes. And it's all because of Sisi. And it's not because Sisi is doing this. He's not doing it because he loves Israel or because he wants to celebrate Hanukkah with Israel. He's doing it because he thinks it's in his own national interest. And so that's the one bright spot that I see right now. But you're right, that when you look at the civil war in Syria, if you look at the arming of Hezbollah in Lebanon, if you look at the nuclear program in Iran, there's a lot to be concerned about right now, and the Israelis do have their plates full.
Do you think our government can do anything more than it's doing?
I do. I think, look, first of all, we can do a much better job of holding the Iranians accountable on their nuclear program. We have given them a lot of sanctions relief for not a lot of tangible return. And that has been very disconcerting for my organization in Washington. We've spent a lot of time at FDD working on Iran sanctions, trying to make sure that America makes a good deal, not just any deal, not an historic deal, but a good deal. I think that there were opportunities along the way to stop the Syrian civil war from deteriorating further. Right now, we see a situation where ISIS is now rolling over large swaths of Syria and Iraq. This could have been stopped years ago. And so I still think that the United States has a role to play. My broader observation is that America still must be actively involved in the Middle East if our goal is to maintain strategic assets there and to maintain calm.
I can't even imagine what would happen to Israel if America didn't remain a strong ally.
Well, it's not about only being a strong ally, but being an active one. That's my concern, because we've seen over the last couple of years an administration that seems eager to move away from the Middle East, to try to pivot away, right, to let the Syria thing work itself out. And I think we're seeing the results of that it doesn't work when we're not actively involved. I think you begin to see actors take advantage of the situation in a very troubling way. A good example of that, for example, is Turkey.
Turkey, yeah.
Now, Turkey is traditionally an American ally, a NATO ally.
Good, strong ally at one time.
Well, now they're the #1 external headquarters for Hamas and the #1 transit point for ISIS fighters, cash, and weapons.
You know, you wrote an article that said they should be released from NATO.
I still believe it. I believe that they are now an unreliable ally, and we need to really reconsider whether they belong in NATO, which is supposed to be a defense-minded organization that defends democracies around the world. I don't see Turkey doing that at all. In fact, I see it slipping away very quickly. Just over the weekend, they arrested 30 journalists without probable cause. This is a deterioration of democracy and a deterioration of values that really needs to be looked at very closely here in America.
Yeah, I would think so. You know, you're here for a very special reason, because you're speaking for Latga, Vatga, and Tzedakah, which is a very important issue. And what is the message you want to leave with your audience that you speak to today?
Well, look, the message is that Israel has a lot of tough challenges. There are some bright spots, as I mentioned, with regard to Egypt, and obviously Israel's got a strong military, very strong technological backbone that has helped its military with Iron Dome and others. But the important thing is that Israel continues to need American support throughout the United States and around the world, and we cannot lose sight of that. We cannot, we can't slow down. It's a constant upkeep with Israel, making sure that it has our support, both financially, but also it's important that people stay up to date so that they can inform their colleagues, their neighbors, their family, because Israel's fight for survival is a constant.
Yeah, it's critical that everybody, all of us, be aware and understand and unite in our effort to make something better, because otherwise, I don't know where we're going to go with this world.
That's right.
And I have to tell you, if you want to be educated in a different way, because I really learned from this book, I recommend the book.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really, it was a pleasure meeting you.
My pleasure.
You know, Susan, I have to tell you, I'm so impressed with this Latga, Vatga, and Tzedakah concept.
It's a wonderful outreach program.
It's great, and she's very enthusiastic. And I have to tell you, I think he's going to make a terrific speaker.
Oh my goodness, he's fascinating, and
Yeah,
he's
it's-
got such a handle on the situation.
Doesn't he? And it's so crucial that we understand what situation we're in, and maybe collectively we come together and do something about it. That's why it's so terrific to be part of the Federation.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure.
Same here. And join us again next week as we take another look into the Jewish world. Goodbye from MOSAIC.